Super Bowl 50 wrap-up and more ahead on SportsBar. Hello and welcome to SportsBar. I'm Ashton Marquis and I'm joined with Chris and Travis as always. So today is all about the Super Bowl. I know there's a lot to say, and even though we're not necessarily all happy with how it ended up, there's definitely some opinions about how the whole game went down. So first of all, thoughts about the overall game.
I think if you like defense, this was a game for you. I think for the casual fan, maybe this wasn't the most entertaining, high-scoring type of game, but I mean, it was just cool to see two, unstoppable or immovable objects just going back, on every single drive. I mean, it's not like Denver won this game on the back of Manning like people probably would have thought, but, Von Miller really won this game and the whole defense. And, I think one of the things going into this game was that this was a better secondary than Carolina has seen all year, and I think they made it all year with a very battered wide receiver core, and they finally went up against a unit that wasn't going to allow them to continue to do it, and it showed. So
the front seven, I mean, Carolina was still able to move the ball and even move the ball through the air when Cam had time to throw. I mean, certainly the back half, I totally agree that secondary was the best one that the Panthers have probably played all season. But, if not for Von Miller and DeMarcus Ware, Sly Williams got in there a few times and batted some balls down. And just the general collective pressure they put on Cam. He couldn't follow through in a lot of his throws, or, he would have a guy backed up right against him, sometimes his own man, trying to kind of throw over him. Makes it really hard. And if the offensive line, I don't agree with a lot of the people that say, oh, they need to, retool the offensive line. It's, trash, this, that, and the other. They've played really well all season. And in many games this year, now, not going up against Denver's front seven, but in many games this year, Cam had all day and then some to throw the ball, which, has helped large in part with his MVP season.
Of course.
And so they just, like you said, they kind of ran into an immovable object in that Denver defense. And, for them to overcome that maybe next year, if they run into him again, certainly going to need guys like Kelvin Benjamin, other guys who can make something out of nothing and have just, real special talent at the wide receiver position.
Yeah, I don't even think it's a case that the line necessarily is bad. I think it's just one of those situations where they're just not that good. Denver is just that good, and they pose such a problem because of the way that they can blitz off the edge. I mean, Cam Newton, typically, he can make room for himself to make throws, and the way that they were containing him, I mean, no defensive line in the league right now can do it the way that they did it. And I mean, it just, Cam was obviously uncomfortable. I mean, just even watching them when they played against Tom Brady, I mean, that's a guy who never takes sacks, never, he gets the ball off in 2-3 seconds every play, and they made him uncomfortable, and you knew going in Cam had to be worried, and the line just, they didn't have any answers and really couldn't make any adjustments when it really came down to it.
Yeah, no, they just looked like they weren't prepared for, what they were about to see, and I think that, all the practicing that they've done, I'm sure to prepare for that kind of a, pressure was there. It's hard when you don't play against that all season, when you haven't seen it multiple times, you haven't gotten a chance to really get used to it. And I think that it showed that, Cam was not prepared for the pressure he saw. And I mean, I know that I've seen several stats that said that he was faced more pressure last night than he has ever in his entire football career, which I mean, it showed in every way. He was uncomfortable in the pocket. He couldn't get prepared. He wasn't able to see routes. He wasn't able to find the out for the run that he sometimes does. So I think overall it just really, he was just very uncomfortable. He looked very young and inexperienced in comparison to a line that was ready to attack him at pretty much any given moment.
And then the other part of it was that every time they seemed to have a big play, there was some sort of flag or something that brought it back. I mean, as much as we want to talk about how good Denver's defense was, Carolina on paper, in my opinion, is still a better team, top to bottom. I mean, I think that Denver is a very good team, and their defense is playing lights out and played lights out. Yeah. But I think Carolina is a better team. I just think, like you said, inexperience, undisciplined I mean, they got away with it against the NFC a lot this year,
Yeah.
and you just couldn't play Denver like that.
Yeah, you can't shoot yourself in the foot that many times and expect to win. There was
Especially
a point
not that
there in the
early
second.
on.
Yeah, there was
Yeah,
a point there in the
exactly.
second quarter where, I was thinking to myself, obviously I wanted Carolina to pull it out, but I wasn't going to have the same kind of frustration that I would if they hadn't. I was going to be more understanding because I understood that given these early, screw ups, you kind of just don't deserve to win at that point.
Yeah.
And like you said, even if you think they're the better squad, maybe top to bottom, or on another Sunday perhaps,
Yep.
you don't know what's going to happen. But the types of mistakes and the flags before the ball was snapped, they had, I think, 6
Yep.
or so, 6, 7, and even if you're not turning the ball over, putting you behind the sticks, going against that particular defense, ultimately just it proved too tall of a task.
And the early turnovers, I mean, it had to kind of, you saw the Malik Jackson fumble recovery for a touchdown, and it was eerily reminiscent of, Denver just 2 years ago when that ball goes flying over Peyton's head. It's one of those mistakes in a game that you're just like, dang, you know what I mean? And to happen early, it's one of those hard things to overcome. Defensive touchdowns are one of the biggest momentum swings in all of the sport. And so for that to happen early was just frustrating. And then the fumble at the end of the game that Cam Newton went, and he's getting scrutinized right now for not diving down for. And I don't know necessarily what happened there. It's one of those things that it's hard to put yourself in that position. Everyone wants to say, oh, I'd dive right down on it, but it sounds like Rivera said he was waiting for it to kind of pop out, and it never did.
Yeah.
And, he can't be blamed for this whole thing, but those turnovers were extremely costly.
Yeah. Well, people are acting like the fumble right at the end was, somehow the game changing.
Yeah.
The game was effectively over by the time that had happened. Yes, in theory, they could have done something fancy and fake something here and there, but you can't blame
before
him
that
for that
fumble,
point.
it was 16-10. So if they don't turn the ball over, they have a chance, and you're obviously going for it. You're going to have 4 downs right there. So I do think the fumble was a serious.
Yeah, it was definitely a mistake for sure. It was definitely going to change something, but
I'm not going to harp on him having should dove for it. It was kind of at an awkward distance for him. I don't know if you were really noticing that, but when you dive on something, generally you want to have enough space to kind of leap on it. Now, I guess he should have fallen on the ball, but it was kind of right there at his feet, and then he had a fellow Panther dive at his feet for the ball, so he didn't.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things. If Cam dives for the ball, gets it, but blows out, like fractures his leg or something in the dive, is it really worth it at that point? Because now you're talking about a team who is, yes, you're still in a position to win, but now fractured leg, who knows going into the beginning of next season? You know what I mean? I don't know.
Yeah.
You would think in the Super Bowl you kind of lay it all on the line, but you never know. I mean, it's hard to put yourself in that position. And of course, that's what the media is going to, harp on is those things for the next 2 weeks. But at the same time, it's one of those plays that just happens. You know what I mean?
Cam's an easy guy to harp on too. I think that, if it had been Peyton Manning having something like that happen, they're not going to harp on him the same way that they do Cam. He's kind of an easy target overall. He's a little moodier. He's a little bit more, he's young and rough around the edges. Everyone thinks that he's, the hottest thing that's ever walked in the door kind of at Carolina, which he is a lot of the time, but I think that it gets blown out of proportion a lot, and it kind of becomes he's either up here or he's down here. There's no in between in the media. So I think that he's getting a lot of blame for things that he doesn't need to get blamed for. I think that overall he played as good of a game that I would have expected from him for what he was facing. I think that he did what any relatively young quarterback was going to do in the biggest game that they have ever played. So overall, I think that, he's getting a lot of negative feedback over something that isn't necessarily his fault.
And it's not even like it was like the play like last year in the Super Bowl. You know what I mean? It wasn't in that crucial of a moment. You know what I mean? Young quarterbacks make mistakes, and you're going against, Denver, who they're a very experienced team at all levels of football, both offensively and defensively, and they just weren't going to make those same mistakes. And so, for Carolina, at the end of the day, it's a sad loss, but I think that Carolina will be a team that will be back next year. I mean, it's either going to be them or Seattle as far as I see. I don't know about Arizona. Same thing, they have that experience, but at what point does the team go from being like perfectly there with experience to all of a sudden too old? That's a really fine line that seems to happen a season or two.
The only thing that really concerns me is, I think Carolina, assuming that they don't let half the team go for this, that, or the other reason. Certainly has the talent to be back in that same position next year. And at certain positions, particularly wide receiver, will be getting an upgrade. But this one stung, and anytime you lose in the Super Bowl, it's
gonna hurt.
It's gonna hurt, and success, just isn't guaranteed. I mean, you had this same team go 12-4, 2 seasons before that, and they finished 7-9-1, and kind of limp into the playoffs. So the NFL is a very competitive, probably the most competitive athletic, or professional sports league, we have in the States. So I would like to say that with confidence that, let's not worry about it. Cam will have another shot at the Super Bowl, and this team will. And but
there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes in the offseason.
I can't say that for sure. And hopefully they can bounce back and not let this get to them too awful bad. But what about Thomas Davis? I thought he played terrific.
Did you see the Instagram post that he put out of his, oh my gosh, his stapled up arm? It was insane. And to know that he played through that.
He had 7 solo tackles and was a big part of the reason why, Denver's offense was, pretty inept most of the game. So I thought that was just absolutely terrific. But I felt like most people feel like, particularly right after he had that surgery, that this guy's definitely going to play in this game. He's going to play unless something serious happens, because it's the Super Bowl. It doesn't get any bigger than that. And he was one of the few people that actually was a part of the squad in 03. So I kind of hate that he's now suffered that sting twice. But he has played in 2 Super Bowls. A lot of people never even make the playoffs in their career.
Very true.
Now, good for him in that way, I guess.
There's been a lot of controversy with the calling of the game. I know we talked a little before that, a lot of people feel like, the refs were trying to give it to Peyton. They were trying to give it to the Broncos. There were several calls. I know that the catch that wasn't a catch with the ball hitting the ground.
I have no idea what is a catch.
Exactly.
I really have no idea.
That's exactly what that comes down to, is that
I don't think anyone does. The refs don't.
See, because
I was furious.
And the thing about that is that like there's some imposition against the fact that like if someone's going to the ground, that ball better be just stuck to them like glue. Because the second it starts moving, refs are not calling that a catch.
They expect it to be right here holding it.
How does your body absorb
as a
all the shock of smacking the ground? You know what I mean? Whether or not it moves a little bit, as long as you still have somewhat possession of it. I mean,
I think it's always I thought it was funny in this season up until the Super Bowl, and it was the Panthers. But when I would be watching other games this year, and they bring on yada yada yada, former head referee for the National Football League, and they're like, "Yep, this is totally a catch. There's no way this call is going to be overturned or other way around. This is certainly this is what this is." And at least in my watching, 80% of the time that call got reversed, or it wasn't a catch, or it was a catch, but whatever. It was contrary to what the older gentleman who had done this before thought, and so I'm thinking, has the rule really changed that much? I mean, it seems really overblown. If you catch the ball, you catch the ball. If you don't catch the ball, you don't catch the ball. And also, I feel like when you're catching a pass, the ground can jar the ball loose and cause that to be incomplete, but a fumble, the ground cannot cause a fumble.
Well, it's like the grounds, can't assist in a catch, but it can stop a catch.
And there's been some plays this season where it was kind of simultaneous. You catch the ball, you make a football move,
which is the worst rule of any.
Whatever that is, you make a football move. So you catch the ball, you make a football move, and you go to the ground, and then okay, wait. So he loses the ball. So is that an incomplete pass or a fumble at this point? And
if he's in the end zone, then everything else goes.
I feel like the whole
don't know what's happening.
Yeah, the whole rule is just too much gray area. And not that one particular play lost the Panthers the game.
It was a signal, I think, what was going on.
Yeah, but it did kill that drive, and
it killed a lot of momentum that they needed.
Killed a lot of momentum, and you don't necessarily expect Contry to catch a 35-yarder down the middle.
At
his age.
I think the worst thing about it was just the fact that personally I'm watching, I'm going, okay, I think that yes, it is a catch, but according to the rules,
Right.
it's not a catch. It's like, did he have the ball? Did he have control of it?
Yeah.
Yes, it looked like it, but according to what the rules say, no, it doesn't count anymore. So
I've always been of the mindset that, like, when you see a catch, you know what I
Yeah.
mean.
Yeah.
And ruling on gut feeling is probably not the best rule, but these are paid refs. Like, if they see it and they're like, oh, that seems like a catch, then it's a catch. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? And too much. I mean, going all the way back to when this all really started, that old Calvin Johnson touchdown where he like essentially braces with the ball as he's going down.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a touchdown. You know what I mean? And now we've got the Des Bryant catch from last year. It's about time that the competition committee really sits down and looks at this and maybe bring in those head refs like Pereira and Carey, who they bring on every telecast, but they don't even seem to know what it is.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And have a conversation about it, because I think well, I know at least Panthers fans today are pretty livid about it, but I mean, the rest of the league, it seems like every team has had a situation, whether it be in the playoffs or regular season, where they've been essentially screwed over by that rule.
yeah, it was like
And
one of
so-
our camera techs said, if it's not a catch for the Patriots, it doesn't get to be a catch for the Panthers.
Exactly. It's definitely something that's got to be looked at, but.
Yeah. Now, MVPs, do you think that, Von Miller, I think, was pretty, at least in my opinion, I think he deserved it. But I've seen some people say that, it should have gone to DeMarcus Ware, or it should have, Peyton Manning should have gotten it because it was his last game, which I love Peyton, but no, that's not a reason to give someone an MVP. But overall, what are your thoughts on all that?
If Deion Branch won a Super Bowl MVP for the Patriots during one of their Super Bowls, then Manning doesn't just get one for being the quarterback
Yeah.
during the Super Bowl.
Especially when he didn't do very much.
I mean,
Sorry, Peyton, but
I would look at that as I'm personally not a fan of, for instance, Kobe being an all-star.
Yeah.
Or just that
they
kind of
give it to them because they're already there.
the ode
kind
to
of
their
a thing.
career.
Yeah.
I understand that it is a
You're old and we feel bad for you.
it is
Here
a
you
nice
go.
gesture or whatever. But to me, if you don't earn that kind of thing, if you didn't have a Pro Bowl type season or a Super Bowl MVP type game,
Yeah.
you don't deserve those kind of rewards.
It would have felt a little bit to me like giving it to Ray Lewis a few years back, where I felt like it was a lot more of a symbol as to, oh, you're leaving and we feel bad for you. And
But now Ray Lewis did a lot more in that
he
game.
did a lot
Yeah,
more
and
than
did
Peyton
miss
did
it.
in this one,
I mean,
for
just in
sure.
the playoffs in
Ray
general.
Lewis was breathing on the field and did some things occasionally. Peyton had to
true.
hand the ball off and then wait for his defense to turn us over. So
Yeah, he did look like he was napping a few times.
And I think
but-
Von Miller kind of earned it also in the AFC Championship game. I mean, they probably don't beat New England either, were it not for him in the AFC Championship.
it was a collection of his incredible playoff performance, top to bottom. So he certainly deserved it, and we kind of sort of touched on it, I think. But just talking about the Panthers keeping people and the Broncos keeping people too. I would be very surprised if the Panthers didn't franchise tag Josh Norman.
Oh, yeah.
Either that or they do come to some kind of deal, but. I feel like he's probably going to take that franchise tag money for the 1 year and then renegotiate, because that's just what smart players do in those kind of situations. But then also to him, did you guys see how hard he took that loss on the sideline?
Yeah, it was that.
I mean,
overall
obviously
was
everyone
the hardest I think to see.
I mean, like everyone on the team obviously took it hard. You just lost the Super Bowl, but. They had Josh Norman Cam, the whole game, and have the majority of this season. And
Well, it was hard to sit there, me celebrating, saying, I can't believe the Broncos won. I cheered for them the whole time, and it kind of came down to they show him bawling on the sidelines. Because you can just tell he's so depressed. It kind of killed it for me a second there. I was kind of just like, now I feel bad.
It's one of those things.
It's just hard.
The Panthers overall, all of them, it's a really emotional squad. And so, when the highs are really high, the lows are really, really low. And Josh Norman personifies that, because he's always the hype man out there on the defense. He's one of those guys. He talks a lot of trash and things like that. So he puts his heart into the game. And so, to lose a Super Bowl, it seems like there's always that iconic photo of someone, that's really down in the dumps.
Completely
they need for the
crushed.
newspaper and things like that.
There's nothing more sobering than losing the Super Bowl. And there was a lot of people that were pretty jacked up about this game. And I feel like there was quite a few households around the Carolinas that that Super Bowl party didn't quite
It didn't end the way they expected.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
No, I mean, it kind of comes back to Cam again. I mean, he's been getting a lot of flack about the, post-game interviews and everything that he's been doing, and kind of, he's a young guy who took a really hard loss. And I mean, I am not the biggest Cam Newton fan in the world. Like, I've never pretended to be.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think that, the fact that he went up there and he, kind of did his, it was a great game, we played our hardest, kind of standard answers, and then got down without blowing up on someone or completely losing it in front of the cameras was kind of the best thing that he could do in the moment. I mean, it was a tough loss, and I think that Cam being who he is and having the personality that he does, I think that if he had said any more, it would have gone negative really quickly. I think he would have gotten more flack for saying more than leaving it as he did.
But, coming from a background in media, I'm of the mindset that, like, you know what, it's part of the job. You know what, if you can go out and you can do endorsements and you can go out and play in games in front of all these people, part of the job is also taking it when you lose. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And nobody has been better about that, I think, in their career than Peyton Manning right there across the sideline. And they're not the same players. And I'm not saying it absolutely is, but it's something that you've got to strive towards, because you know what, there's going to be more losses that are tough like this. Hopefully not crushing Super Bowl losses. And I also understand it from the perspective that Cam Newton was also the guy that whenever the offense needed something this year, he just seemed to figure it out. I mean, it wasn't Ted Ginn. I mean, Ted Ginn played well, but he made Ted Ginn who he was this year and everything else. And so, you want to do all the fun stuff when you're winning. You got to take the hard parts when you're losing. And I was a little upset to see it. I can definitely understand as a person, but also as a professional, that is part of the job. I mean, even if you Marshawn Lynch it and you get up there and you just want to say you're here so you don't get fined, you still owe the media that time, because they rely on you for your stories and stuff anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm confused. Because I totally agree with you, Chris, for the most part, for the exception of the fact that it was the Carolina Panthers playing in the Super Bowl. And right now, I was just like, yeah, Cam, go do you.
Any other loss.
I have no problem. Any other loss, any other scenario. But I am not going to pretend like I wasn't biased in that particular moment.
Yeah.
And I love the fact he is the anti-Russell Wilson.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think Russell Wilson's a nice guy,
but that's what people say about Russell Wilson.
And I've totally admired. I've always admired Peyton Manning, like you said, for that professionalism. But to a certain point, that kind of thing. It tends to get under my skin.
Yeah.
You're inhuman at some point.
Scripted.
Yeah.
You're
You're scripted. You're not being genuine.
Accepting the trophy and going, I'm going to go home and drink a Budweiser, kind of.
Now that was hilarious.
Classic Peyton.
That was the only time.
Anheuser-Busch says they didn't pay him, so.
I laughed one time in that game, and that's when I laughed.
That was
it. He should have handled that situation with more grace.
Yeah.
But I like the fact that he does have some personality, and he isn't, just a robot who happens to play football.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think that there's a lot of people out there who are thinking, I can't believe he acted that way. I can't believe he did that. But it is nice to see that he cares about the game. It would be a lot harder if he'd walked up there stone-faced and then just said, we played a good game. I'm very proud of my teammates. We worked together well. It was a well-earned win for the Broncos. Like, at least you saw something other than the typical scripted junk.
And not that I hold people on Twitter to a certain standard, because I don't.
You shouldn't.
Still social media.
I don't really hold myself to much of a standard on that platform either. But I was a little disappointed by the amount of just old Auburn kind of things that people were bringing up. Like, that's in the past. And I don't know what about hashtag Scam Newton, him losing the Super Bowl has anything to do with anything.
Yeah.
Well, it's like every time Brady wins a game now, you're going to get the Deflategate or the Spygate or whatever.
And
stuff follows you.
I'm not a Tom Brady supporter necessarily, but that's because he's really good, and that's a large in part because they beat the Carolina Panthers in the 2003 Super Bowl. But I think that kind of talk needs to stop. For Cam and just for anyone who has distanced themselves like that. From a particular instance.
It's one thing if it comes back up really because of something, but
I mean, if he would have burn out of the league in 2 years, and then it's like, well, it's like, what have you really done in the league? And I think you kind of sort of have more right there to just kind of keep bashing on the guy. But
Well, and you can't bash someone who's been such a good ambassador for the league. I mean,
Yeah.
all year, up
All
until
year.
this game, yes, you can look at this game and say he didn't handle afterwards well and everything else. But you know what?
Yeah.
All year, Cam Newton has been the guy for the league right
Oh,
now.
yeah.
And as soon as your big faces like Manning and Brady are out of the league, I mean, he's
Which is
going to be
coming
the
fast.
face of the league.
I
mean, that's the way I see it. Is that it'll be
Yeah.
him or Russell Wilson, and it's probably going to be him.
Yeah, and that time is coming very quickly. I mean, Manning he hasn't said anything yet, but please,
Come on.
dear Lord, just take your win and leave.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's coming soon.
And one more thing about Peyton Manning. I was of the opinion, coming into this game, that he's one of the top 2 or 3 quarterbacks of all time. Anyway, and that kind of argument is kind of overblown. And what does it really matter? You know how they played, and what people say doesn't really make a huge difference. But with him finally tying his brother, who, not that Eli
didn't look
hasn't
too
been a good
thrilled.
quarterback.
Yeah, but of the two,
but yeah,
yeah.
he also, he didn't look too thrilled. I think he's right up there. I mean,
Yeah.
he's in that conversation, even with Tom Brady, even though he has 2 more Super Bowl wins than him.
yeah.
He's been terrific for the league for 20 years.
No,
The
definitely.
guy's been a
But
class act.
I know we could talk football all day, but we are sadly out of time. So that's all for Sports Bar. Let us know what you think at www.watchapptv.com, and we'll see you next week when we talk about something other than football because we don't have a choice.